It was a case that made legal history in Canada. David Stillers was convicted of impaired operation of a canoe, causing death. It is the first time the impaired charges were laid against someone paddling a canoe. 8-year-old Thomas Rancourt died after the canoe capsized and went over a waterfall. With us this morning to take a look at the importance of this case is criminal defense lawyer Juliana Coo. Juliana, good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So I have to say, before this case, it was a bit unclear as to what impaired meant in terms of operating a vessel and really what a vessel meant. So where are we at now with the definition of a vessel?
Right, so I think to start off, what you need to know is impaired driving in a canoe will be treated the same as impaired driving in a motor vehicle. And we've always known that impaired driving laws on land, they apply to motorized vehicles. They do not apply, for instance, to bicycles. So the question was whether on water would they apply to non-motorized pleasure crafts? That's to say kayaks, rowboats, stand-up paddleboards. And a decision was released last fall indicating that indeed a canoe is a vessel and would be subject to Canada's impaired driving laws. Now, Parliament could have given us a very clear, comprehensive, and inclusive definition of what a vessel is. They decided not to. They decided to leave this up to the courts. And in drafting the new impaired driving laws that came into effect last December, initially they had an exclusion to these impaired laws for anything that's non-motorized. However, after hearing from the Canadian Boating and Safety Council that between 1991 and 2010, there have been 375 deaths associated with alcohol and non-motorized pleasure crafts, Parliament had deliberately decided to remove that exclusion.
So does this all have to be on water? Let's say you are, having a couple drinks and you're moving, you're like transporting your canoe, you're carrying it somewhere. Do they consider that transporting a vessel or operating a vessel?
You would be in care and control of your canoe. So say, you park your car and you're carrying your canoe and you're over the legal limit or you're impaired, you could be facing a criminal charge. Now, if you were in your backyard and you're over the legal limit or you're impaired and you fall asleep in your canoe, would you be charged? Likely not, because you wouldn't be using your canoe as a vessel.
So when we think about, floaties and that type of thing, when people are at the lake, they've had a couple drinks, and they go out onto one of those flotation devices.
Right.
Is that considered a vessel?
No, it wouldn't be. So floaties, pool noodles would not be considered as a vessel. It's basically anything that would be able to go down a waterway. So canoes, kayaks, rowboats, stand-up paddleboards, even dragon boats, those would all be considered as a vessel.
So what do you think we're going to see in terms of charges? Do you think we're going to see an uptick in the number of people being charged with this?
Well, it's entirely possible, but I hope not. I hope that the police will use their discretion in terms of laying new charges and really assess whether or not there's a safety issue.
What can you do and legally can't do in the water? I mean, where are we at now?
Well, number one, if you intend on drinking and engaging any sort of water sports or being on any vessel, you should never be drinking while you're underway. And if you intend on drinking, your pleasure craft would need to be docked. It has to be considered a private place. And what that means is there needs to be a permanent kitchen, sleeping accommodations, and a toilet. And the reality is that for most of these kayaks and canoes, they're simply too small to satisfy these requirements. Now, if you wanted to transport alcohol and liquor from one destination to the other, as long as they're in closed containers, that's permissible.
If you'd opened, let's say, a bottle of vodka and had consumed half of it, and then at an earlier time, put the cap back on, put it in your canoe, are you good to go?
Well, it would have to be closed.
Yes,
the cap
it has to be closed.
Exactly.
Okay, so just everything has to be locked
That's right.
It's interesting, and we'll see what happens with this, because obviously quite a landmark case, a terrible tragedy that has occurred in this case. But we'll be looking ahead and seeing how this sort of goes forward from here. Juliana, thank you.
Thank you.